Hello, good afternoon. My name is Fatima Correa, and I'm going to be presenting an article called Workaholism Addiction to Work by Rachel Schifrin and Rebecca Rayson. And this was published in 2011. Okay, so in this presentation, I'm going to be explaining like what workaholism is and discuss some of its, main causes and consequences it has or that it can lead to. And so also kind of like to review the main points of the article and just share my opinion on the author's arguments. Okay, so to get started, we're going to begin with what is workaholism. So, workaholism is characterized by a compulsive need to work. That is something that they told us. But, most people think that workaholism is someone who is like really ambitious or highly dedicated to their career. And so, the authors did kind of explain that workaholism is different from just simply being hardworking, right? So, it can also refer to like it's a constant need to work, and those people that do struggle with it can struggle to even stop when it begins to have a negative effect on other areas of their life. For example, daily activities, families, relationships, and sometimes their physical health. So it does point out that workaholism they still don't have a single definition for it. And so because of this, the authors kind of compare, workaholism to addiction because individuals continue, their behavior despite the negative effects to it. And according to them, work can also become a major source of like identity and self-worth, right? So it can make it really difficult for a person kind of like to separate their value from their job. And this might also change how society should view and address it, right? Like work behavior. So yeah. All right. So their research findings. The article did review several studies that support their argument, and so it does tell us that the some of the studies kind of estimate that between 25 and 30% of Americans may show workaholic tendencies, which is a really big number. The research did connect kind of workaholism to burnout and chronic stress, and that might have some like emotional difficulties. So some studies do suggest that excessive work may increase cardiovascular health risks. Um, so that is really dangerous. The authors did explain that, the effects of workaholism also, it, as we said, doesn't just stick to the individual, but it can also affect the family members as well. And so it's not really like a personality trait or a strong work ethic anymore. It can have some really serious consequences that may be bad for both, their mental and physical health. But yeah. All right, so some of the workaholism causes first is the fear of unemployment, right? So some people may feel like the pressure to constantly have to prove their value at work because they're worried about losing their jobs, right? And so um, that is the first one. The second one is desire for achievement. So many individuals kind of tie their self worth to their success, and to get like promotions and, have a better position or, do accomplishments. So that is also why. And then the next one says society frequently pressures them to gain success. So it did also mention social pressure, because in many cultures, people are praised for working long hours, right? And so they also sacrifice kind of like their personal time and, like for career, for their career, which it could become really addicting after a while. And so when these pressures kind of become really excessive, they can contribute to really unhealthy work behaviors and habits, and that leads to workaholism. Okay, so some of the consequences that they talked about for workaholism, um, is that they can really affect the person's life, right? So the effect on the individual, as we talked about, is burnout, stress, anxiety, but it doesn't just stay there. Family members can also suffer from it. So, spouses can, be real, start having this distance with the relationship in with the workaholic. And so children can also receive, less attention from the parent, or they can also develop really unhealthy habits because of the parent. So it does cause negative effects on children. And so, as you can see with these things, it's not really like an isolated problem. It kind of begins to, really spread throughout the entire family. It's not just the individual. Okay, so I'm going to present my position on what I believe. So I do think it really gives you a strong like discussion on workaholism, right? So one of its strengths is that it supports the argument that, you know, with many sources and studies, so they can clearly explain why workaholism can be viewed as a type of addiction with examples. And the article also kind of explains that workaholics often continue their behavior even when it causes negative consequences. So I think I already mentioned that, but it did like show it a little bit more, which is in the article, which is similar to other addictions, which is like alcoholics, for example. So, but there are some limitations, and the article it's really good, but it kind of shows like a literature review and not their own research or data collections. But it still does a great job to show like examples of workaholism. And so um, because it doesn't include any, some conclusions can, vary, because, long hours of work will not just be enough to diagnose workaholism. And so it does need a little bit more and maybe some data collection to defend that. But yeah, it was a really good article. Okay, so next it will be something that they discuss, which is the treatment and prevention to, prevent workaholism. One option is, counseling for the individual, which that can lead to helping them kind of like identify really unhealthy work habits and develop, things that they can cope with, or strategies to prevent these, like to prevent it getting worse. Another thing, if it also did affect, the family, it might be like family therapy, maybe. And so, also support programs from the organizations that they're working for could provide a lot more help, I think, in making sure that it's going to prevent workaholism. Um, and to conclude, workaholism is a great concern because it can cause psychological and social issues in the individual. And so I feel like society often really rewards excessive work. And so the article will show that like workaholism can really negatively affect their relationships and health, and also like their overall well-being, right? So yeah, the workplace environment should kind of like defend that, and I feel like they should help prevent workaholic habits in their workplace. It does also kind of like provide really strong evidence to support the idea that, that workaholism shares many characteristics with other addictions. And so it's really important because, it would be really good to learn how to prevent these habits. And so also kind of like with yourself, you can kind of have a little bit of personal awareness. You see, where does this affect my life and how I can change it? But yeah, thank you so much for listening. That is my presentation.